There's overset.
So we've kind of danced around it a little bit here, but I've definitely danced around this next part, which is ego.
Well, we've talked about this a lot. Go for it.
Well, I haven't. I mean, I've touched on it a little bit, but I didn't want to because I knew it was a big part coming up here. And your ego is largely tied to your identity.
Sense of self.
Yeah. And if you have the wrong sense of identity, your ego is going to be fed wrong.
Yes.
And it's going to run amok. Amok, amok, amok. Amok, 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 amok.
I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to
I just recently tried to watch the new one, and I like the old one.
Yeah.
So, hocus pocus.
Yeah. I you know what? I don't know if I ever saw the whole of the old one. That was like 30 years ago.
It's the only time I like Sarah Jessica Parker.
That's a lie.
No, it is.
Okay, so...
But we've all heard the thing about the two wolves that live inside of us, right? You've got two wolves that live inside of you, good and bad. And whichever one you feed is the one that grows. That's ego.
I thought they were crows.
Wolves, crows. Sure, there's plenty of iterations. I actually think I have seen crows. So
I'm sure, yeah, there's a bunch of them.
But it's those two things are ego and esteem.
Yeah.
And those they're very closely tied to each other. And it's easy to feed one accidentally when you're trying to feed the other.
You know, I dance around, well, I don't dance around, but a lot of what I talk about when we talk about stuff, it's actually the things that we talk about is to fortify your ego so it's not so fragile. It's the, you know, because like the more that you are out there, and again, this is why I believe that the message is very much manipulated, that we're being taught nowadays. Mm-hmm. And it helps us very much, it helps the bottom line, and it actually helps us become more obedient and be more passive, so we can just all a little BS can keep on getting washed over us. Is because more safe you are, the less your ego is tested, the less your metal is tested.
The bigger your ego becomes.
You're safe, right? So you have no exposure to failure, right? You have no exposure to learn how to deal with difficult situations.
Which is why participation trophies are garbage.
Amazing. Everyone wins. You feel so good. I'm sorry that you lost here. Yeah. Here, 50 points for not doing anything.
I get for like little tiny kids, right? Who are just learning.
Well, that is so much more than just, you know, what.
I'm okay with it there because that's the time to teach them to play for fun.
Yes. Yeah.
As they start getting older.
Well, they will within their own freaking little social gathering there, they will fight for winners. Like
they'll create their own competition.
Yeah, they will make their own.
It's not created for them.
They'll take our games and they'll make their own games.
It'll very quickly become toxic.
Yeah. Don't use that word. I hate the word. It's misused. It'll quickly become competitive. In competition, like people think competition is bad. It's not inherently bad.
But when kids are allowed to do it on their own, the competitions become toxic. Rather than when it's introduced for them through a game that they've been playing and they know how to have fun with. But you got to understand that sometimes people are going to be better than you. Maybe you're just having a bad day. But this is one of the things that Jocko talks about a lot too, right? With leadership is that, all right, we had a bad day. You still work really hard, and this ties into ego. What my point is here, that I'll get to here in a moment. But, you know, it's, hey, you worked really hard at doing this. You came up short today. What do you think happened? It's not just failure, but actually taking that failure and reevaluating it.
So
and learning from it.
Every culture, you know, from Native Americans have had something like this where the elders and the people, they let the interaction happen. Mm-hmm. Let the interaction happen. But when the children are done, you know, if there's bad animosity, there's either good talking. You know, they again, this goes back to what I was trying to say earlier. There was guiding. Yeah, and I should never brought in work. That was a bad word, apparently. But there's guiding, right? And so every culture's had that where, you know, there's a breakdown. Sometimes it doesn't have to be said a lot, but just enough for the child to understand. Because sometimes if you say too much when a child's young, they won't get it. And they'll take it the wrong way, honestly. So you have to let there be a nuance, but you have to let the child grow. Like just like adults, like even as we're going, as we're going, we are actually breaking down our own, myth, the wrong things.
Huge part of cultivating your identity.
Yes, you're breaking down. You're trying to learn, and it's and what works, and you'll learn right away that bullshit doesn't work. It's hard. It's hard to maintain if you are honest and true to yourself. It is hard to maintain being a evil person and a bad person within a society.
It's a lot of work. It's like hardly working. You have to work hard to hardly work.
I mean, yeah.
I'm putting that specifically in a work environment.
Yeah.
But back to ego a little bit here. What I was kind of touching on there is that there are a lot of things that we tell ourselves and that other people tell us. And some of those feed your ego and some of them feed your esteem. So just a few examples of ego words are like pretty, talented, smart, things that complement natural aspects.
One of the best
aspects that you don't have control over.
Yeah. So one of the best things, I had stumbled upon this from a few motivational speakers I listened to. Les Brown, what's the crazy white guy, the older one that passed away 10, 15, 20 years ago? Zig Ziglar. But they talk about, and then Jocko and Echo talked about it in one of the episodes. It's very famous now, one of the biggest listened to, most viewed. But it's the situation of what makes that, like, why is that valuable, right? Like what's of character, what gives us value. It's like Echo gives an example as to, well, good job, you were strong today. You don't tell Kate, well, you're strong. You say, okay, good job. You did a lot of work. Yeah, you did all those reps, right? Those reps are what make you strong.
The point that I was making in my reference to Jocko, because it's esteem-based words are hardworking, skilled, knowledge. It's when you're trying to complement
the shallow,
controllable aspects.
Yes, if you want, if something that's a cheap word, like the things that we traditionally treat, like that's why you want, like before got overblown, but 10, 15, years ago, we used to say that you don't always want to tell your daughters that they're pretty. Yes, they are beautiful. Congratulations, but give them words and definitions that are of value, right?
Yeah, this is another thing Jocko's talked about.
Yeah, he has, absolutely. But I want to take credit for it because I was thinking about it a long time ago.
Story time. This is one of my problems that I had with my daughter while we were in Ohio.
Okay.
Is my wife's relatives, because those are the only ones we were around at the time, were constantly telling her how pretty she was and all this stuff, and she developed a habit of walking. Anytime she walked by a reflective surface, she was staring at herself. Ugh. And I believe there's still some aspects of that linger, because it takes like 15 minutes to get ready in the morning.
Well, and then that that's a nuance of childhood.
And a lot of that too is probably my failure as a parent to address it properly, but it's hard to do when it's like a 4-year-old child.
There's a lot. There's a lot that I'm glad I don't have to deal with right there. So go ahead.
Yeah, but it is like it's one of the ways that I recognize that ego versus esteem thing. I didn't realize it until just recently. But
you didn't have the it wasn't put in front of you plainly, right? Like you were aware of it. Because honestly, so
Never Get Angry Again is the book that is helping me a lot understand ego and some other things. Like between that and Atomic Habits, there's so many things that I've thought and felt and believed for a long time that are all these pieces are going right where they're supposed to go, man.
Connection. And I just want to talk on like traditional, like I get that like our grandparents or parents that happened from them, like they'll use those words, but it's because back in the day those words weren't spoken enough, right? It wasn't enough kindness with of those, like to tell someone that they're pretty, like you would only tell certain people that, or
you tell your significant, like the girl you're trying to woo.
Yeah, it wasn't as freely used. Whereas nowadays they've been so weaponized that we use them as it's overindulgence almost. Where before it was not enough.
Well, there's just so much emphasis put on it.
Exactly.
Either if you believe through the magazines or the people talking about the magazines,
or all the social media, right? All the faces in your face. So we go from not probably underselling or under just not enough there. Like it's like the hugs, right? Not enough fathers probably
limited
hugged back in the days.
that limited amount gives it so much more
It is
value
more,
though, because
yes,
it's
right. There is that nuance, right? I'm not saying that just flood it. I'm not saying flood it. I'm saying that the kickback was the flood, right? And now we're seeing that. Just it's a cycle, it's a circle. But I'm saying in a way I'm defending that generation because of that.
The boomers. Sorry,
whoever you want to call them, even farther back than that, man. It's a lot. There's a good from the 30s to the 70s, 80s. To where that maybe 60s when it started creeping around to changing it, and then full blow from late 90s. So there's some overlap there.
Yeah. But we've kind of hit this, that ego's tempered with humility and acknowledging the failures, but also taking the time to learn from them.
Yeah.
But along with that, also acknowledging the work that you put into it. Because that striving, that drive to do something, that's an ego-driven.
Yeah, it's definitely
attitude.
definitely. Yeah, your self aspiration.
Yeah.
Definitely ego-driven. Yeah, and that's why.
But that's why you need to temper it.
Yes,
because if you're telling somebody that they're talented, then they think that they can just do it automatically, yes. And when they do fail, it's not their fault because they're their talent. Who was that? Le'Veon Bell? No.
Running back?
Yeah. Steelers?
Yeah.
Was it Le'Veon? I don't know. There's quite a few Bells. So
they had back in the early 2000s, late 90s. There was a linebacker, but their Le'Veon Bell's of running back they had in the past 10 years. He's very good.
Yeah.
What about him?
He's great. He is talented.
Well, he was. Injuries catch up.
But that, I think he's an example of that being fed into ego, because he let his talent, he tried to use his talent to dictate what he should get from the team. And he was a very valuable part of that team, but he became a big baby about it.
Well,
if I've got the correct Bell.
So, yes, no, that's a heavy nuance, because so here's the thing about, I almost prefer other professional sports, maybe basketball, because they're a lot softer sport, but so football players, a lot of those guys, so he was a second round pick, so he's not getting paid $1 million, he makes $1 million, but their contracts are very funny.
Oh yeah,
very funny. And running backs take abuse. So most running backs only last 4 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And if you are talented enough to last maybe 6 years, usually you get a serious injury. Now his knees got blown out. What you're talking about is he's a second round pick, and so it's like his first year I think he's solid, and he just blew up. He just starts dominating. He's got good hands. He lost weight from college, which is why I thought it was okay. My hobby is scouting these guys. So I am in second round, third round. Back then it was different. First rounds are different. Now he's a second round quarterback as a first round, or second round running back would be a first guy back then. First round guy. But he holds out, but rightfully so.
And there is a lot that I don't know. It's just from my limited
rightfully
view.
So he did. He should have. He deserved the money that he held out for. But that actually, it's. But football is a funny sport. If you go soft, you can get injured.
And I don't think his approach to it was the best. It looked like a kid throwing a temper tantrum.
There's holding out, and what you can there's back then, because things have changed towards a more of a either nuanced or player view also. Because back then it was all this team stuff from a fan's point of view, and that dictated the writers and the beat guys and all that stuff, right? So nowadays you see more of a more evened out, almost more player type.
I don't pay attention to that much stuff though. So that's just purely my perspective.
So for example, you'd say a sports athlete who, whatever, they it happens. There was Russell Wilson. He forced a trade out. He's having some horrible luck right now.
Well, maybe he is a better example then.
I would say he's a better
because example. He's another person that's showered with talent, and he is talented, and he's put in the work to hone those skills.
He has a celebrity singer wife,
but that constant feedback on the talent, it's very likely that it fed his ego.
I think it led him astray.
And especially from listening to some, I think you might have shared it, Richard Sherman's podcast.
That's the one,
when they were talking about it, that Pete Carroll let a lot of crap slide for a while, and then tried to rein it in and couldn't.
Every week there's more and more like Marshawn Lynch. We're off.
Yeah, because he.
So yes, Russell Wilson.
Is that a big part of why he ended up leaving Marshawn?
Yes and no.
Because I know there was some squabbles.
There was, but
Marshawn, that was like really early in Russell's career too.
Yes. So, yeah, that allows we're way off subject. But Russ is a good example because he let his ego control things and dictate because he had wants, right, and he gave up all the things that had put him on this good path to achieve good. Maybe not the exact thing that he wanted. Yeah. Because that could have been a delusion also. So he forced the way out of there because what he wants, like even Rich and Marshawn talked about this. Marshawn said, "Man, you could have this," and he said, "You already won this." And Richard Sherman says, "Well, man, people said no, it was a Legion of Boom. No, it was Marshawn Lynch that got him that championship, and he wanted to do it by himself. He wanted to say, no, I can do this stuff, and perhaps he could have gotten the one here, but." He didn't let that happen. He didn't listen to the coaching because you're seeing right now, talented guy, but he needs a certain system to protect him from himself. Yeah. And right now, he doesn't have that. And what's happening?
Maybe being in Denver, getting beat up week after week.
Well, they're like 2-4, man.
Maybe that's what he needs, though.
It does. It is there. And I don't think he's an evil person by any means.
No.
I just think that he's
just misguided
himself, and I think that people in his personal camp fed into that.
Got a bunch of yes men.
Well,
so he's George Lucas.
Not that bad. So I digress. Let's move on.
Wow. We went.
Yeah, spectrum, people. Sorry.
All right. So now we're into what we can do to make things better. Maybe.
We covered that too.
But it really, should be pretty simple here. It's like really it comes down to doing some self-exploration.
Well, yeah, we touched on that. Like, I will, because I think this isn't a me ego thing. It's actually the opposite. Like, I went down this path. Mm-hmm. I've hit these rocks in a lot of ways, and the only thing like that, kind of like picked myself up back in my early 30s was, the mud pies that I ate, and I had to swallow some pride. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating because you, as a young man, you don't try to ever be egotistical, or if not even that, but just let yourself be led astray. You don't have to be egotistical or arrogant to let yourself be led astray.
No, it oftentimes getting off course just slightly, like even if it's like a single person can lead you off the path or just much, and then
or just an ideal,
develop an ego.
Yes, or a single ideal, right? Like you can just look at the wrong thing. You can aim at the wrong thing, thinking this is what I want and this will get me here. But again, like the nuance to that is, I had protected myself also. Yeah, I had not let myself fail. I had not, put myself out there. And the more I did, the more I, took things on the chin a lot. Which is funny, but that's what Marshawn said to Russ. You gotta take down the chin. It's fun. Well, yeah, it's fun. That's legit. It really it shows understanding from a man who's a professional athlete who had been there.
Person who's
persevered,
has some humility.
Yeah. And he had been there too. Like he had been at the top, and then he got sunk down. And Seattle traded a 5th round for him. He became we know what happened. Yeah, the legend happened, right? And so he it's a man who nuanced and learned those lessons. Yeah. And so, I took a couple of shots on the chin, and you learn. So you can't protect yourself. What's it?
Another horror movie. X. It's group of young adults go to a farm, essentially a B&B, but not a B&B because it's in the 70s, and they're trying to make porn. And there's a camera dude who's who's film student and trying to be all artsy fartsy about it, and he brings along his girlfriend, and she's like, "Hey," like at first they call her Church Mouse because she's, and then she's like, maybe this isn't so filthy. Maybe I kind of want to try it, and like dude loses his crap. So what this all amounts to is this one scene because you've got the one guy, the main guy, the leader of the group essentially, but he's like 40 something.
Let's keep it G-rated here.
He's like 40 something, and he comes out to find this guy, and he's like, "Look, man, I've been 24 once, but you've never been 43."
Yeah, right. That's a good on point, right?
Yeah.
And like there's those things you don't know, and it's impossible to know. The only way you can know, right? The only way, like this is why a lot, you'll see older people respect some people and younger people because they've put themselves, and often it's not on purpose.
Yeah, sometimes you
it just happens.
End up in the wrong place.
Sometimes you just end up in these difficult situations that teach you.
Yeah.
Right, and you're lucky enough that they don't go too sideways, and that's what means. Like everyone's like trying, make safe and be safe, and all that stuff. And you can't do that. You can't do that no matter what, because that will push people in a different direction, and they will learn worse things, and then they'll become just a very toxic, delusioned individual.
Yeah. So, anyways, do some self-exploration. That includes some personality tests. I hear that's a really good thing. I started looking at some and didn't get very far with them to actually take them.
Well, they're hard.
And this is something from Intentional Father, that you don't want to be real young doing this because things change drastically in that period of time, and you don't want to get yourself caught onto this is who I am, this is who I have to be.
Right, yeah.
You're going to have a miserable life.
Well, like Jocko talked about that, right? Like you have these framed up things. So he takes these ideals that he has and puts them on his children within the BJJ, right? Like he talks about like how he his daughters grind it out with 15 matches a day.
His son, he tried to get him into it earlier and didn't want to, and he had to be like, you know what? This isn't my life. I got to back off. And then his son finally did decide to. And now his daughter teaches classes.
Yeah.
But it's from Intentional Father, talking about helping your child learn to understand themselves. It's also a great book.
Yeah, that's like there's a funny like nuance. Like I always like seeing a dad who gets it, because it's ironic, but you get to watch if you're smart about it, especially there's even parts of leadership when you get to. And so you say, okay, well, here's this and this and this for parameters of an activity or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the kids go off there and they do whatever the heck they want, right?
Yeah.
But you get to sit back and watch, like you said, it's like, well, I told you so, right? Right? So without being that father that overreacts, or that mother, right? Just relax. They're going to figure it out, but it's going to be entertaining. So sit back and be entertained by how crazy. Yeah, I know. But we did it too, right?
Yeah.
Like other people, teachers, whoever told us.
I was alone a lot, so
I
didn't have anybody to
within a social structure, right? Same, right? But teachers or gym class or whatever it might have been, right? Like, okay, don't do this, and then like you go and do something dumb, and they're laughing at you because you didn't listen. And it's entertaining to them. It's like sucker, right?
Yeah. Well, tonight, I wasn't home because I was at work when this happened, but kids are prepping dinner and letting them use knives, and one of them finally cut themselves. Yeah. Even though it.
Yeah, exactly.
But even I forget to do that sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I've almost cut my finger off several times because I got good knives now.
You're gonna cut yourself. You're gonna cut yourself doing things.
Yeah.
You're gonna get. That's probably won't be the last time they cut themselves. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be willing that it's never a serious injury, and even if it is, it takes a lot to really do some serious damage.
Yeah.
Even even a rush up to the emergency room with 50 stitches is not always how it might be.
Just Google how I can learn about myself.
There's
pop-ups of questions you can ask yourself.
Yeah.
And or a series of questions that you can answer that help you get an idea, see what your foundation is at least.
I think if we're gonna give advice on how you do this, shoot.
I'm not gonna tell you anything specifically.
I'm not. I think it's don't be afraid to read things that you are interested in, and then discuss them with anybody or voice your opinion. Go out there and voice your opinion. Get out there and mix it up.
Yeah.
You like sports, and you see this all the time about sports. So this is a good thing about sports. This is why I always fight. The people who stick their nose up at sports, I argue with them because there's so much nuance you can learn from it. And in the social gathering of things, it teaches a great give and take.
Yeah.
Of education, and then you can get schooled on what you thought you might have known. But why were you thinking that? Maybe you overlooked it. It's because you kept it too close to your ego or your identity.
Also, a great place to.
I mean, comics are the same way, or anything really. Video games.
Well, I mean, sports is also a great thing too, though, because you've got this idea, and it gives you a place to test that idea against other, like a play or whatever, or a certain style.
Yeah,
of
you can do it.
something.
Yeah, you can do it. Like you can do it with any media or any.
You can do that with a lot of things.
This is the greatness of our pop culture.
Sports, there's a lot more direct feedback from it.
Yes, well, yeah, especially right now with the seasons. But this is a good thing about our pop culture. You can do it with music. You can do it, but don't sell yourself short. Enjoy something, care about something, and hopefully you take the time. And if you don't, and then you put yourself out there, well, you'll find out either way.
Yeah.
And if you do, guess what? Maybe if you didn't take the time to really invest into that, clearly you don't care about that much about it, or it's just maybe just right now you don't. Maybe you might later on down the future you come back to it. Mm-hmm. But there's so much of a growth period that I think putting yourself out there the most is the most important. And don't have to dive into the deepest end. You don't have to like go onto Twitter and start just blasting opinions, but you can, find people, especially face to face.
Go down to the coffee shop, or go down to the library,
or the gym. You have or YMCA, whatever gym. You can play some ball.
Yeah, whatever.
You play some racquetball. You go to the gym, work out. You go places. You ride a bike. You go to a zoo. Whatever place might have. Your friends and you might be interested in socializing in, or if you're a loner, you might be able to talk to people about.
Yeah.
As a loner, that's one of the most enjoyable things is that when I interact with people, it's just a place where I don't know everybody, but it's nice to enjoy people at that time period because they won't come home with you.
Yeah. Well, and like some more in this, like exploring, I was introduced to D&D at a relatively young age.
I was not.
Growing up here, well, it was like 13 to 15.
I was 20s.
But there wasn't a culture of it around here.
Yeah.
So there was nothing to help me cultivate that. And now that I'm almost 40, and like 35 is when my wife and I really started, and
That's cool.
We started with our kids.
That's cool.
I realized how much I do actually enjoy it, and like all aspects of the hobby and tabletop gaming, period. Because like painting, I love to paint, period, and just in general, but a wall, I will paint walls and love it. So having the minis to paint is fantastic for me because it gives me an outlet for that.
Yeah.
And playing D&D, like to be creative.
I've never met a person that wants to give D&D or any of the things you might call a tabletop game like that a chance. They really enjoy it because I think it really does. It has so many different facets of it. There are things that people enjoy.
Great learning tool.
Artistic, yeah. It is a phenomenal learning tool. It really is. The way I got into D&D was the guy who actually one of the reasons I moved here to do art with other guys and stuff like that, comics. Guy's a douchebag, but besides that point, like he's like, "Hey man, you want to come play D&D with us?" I'm like, "Do I get to like make my own flower power character?" I was being a smart ass, right? And it had actually been interesting, but like I never when I was growing up, it was completely either bad, because my parents being very strict about from that, and just like outside that, I never had those friends, like I never had that exposure, and when I got here, I've never gotten a chance to actually get enough of it. Like I've never. Every time I get a campaign going, friends have left. People have gotten different jobs. That's a real thing. Like me and you and Matt were playing back in the day.
Well, even then, like we kind of all got a little bit older and got jobs and found different friend groups, and it's hard to balance.
It is
these
really hard
groups,
to balance your schedule once you are married and have kids.
Well, even before that, like as a teenager with school, I ended up going to a different school. I had different friend group from work that I started spending more time with, and like I lived away, so it was harder to spend time with them.
Makes sense.
But then ask yourself the really hard question too: ask yourself if your identity is just a label or if it's made up of characteristics, because we talked about that pretty decent length.
Yeah.
If you're just a label,
Yeah,
you're just a shell of a person.
You'll start to,
and you'll crack like a porcelain doll.
You're a porcelain doll. No, people organically you will start to question. You'll start questioning, and the reason you're questioning.
Hopefully.
Well, yeah. Well, the reason they do, and sometimes we just hide from it. It is impossible to not question once there's a doubt.
Yeah.
Right. It's this internal monologue that happens.
Kind of weird example. One of FDR's opponents in that time. So I don't remember who it was, but how do you fight Santa Claus? Because FDR was talking about giving all this stuff away, right? And it really made me think, like, what happens there, right? So like, kids don't just naturally go, Santa doesn't exist one day. Oftentimes, another kid says, Santa doesn't exist, and you go, yes, he does. Yeah. But now that question is implanted in your brain, and then you start paying attention to things differently.
There's things
and
that
then
you
start
notice,
setting
right?
things up.
Yeah, it's like any nowadays. Like there's so many different. There's so many different. What do you call them? The tin hat guys theories.
Conspiracy theories.
Thank you. So there's so many of them, but there are ones that are real. And then once you say something about that, I've literally had conversations with friends that I know that don't want to talk about it because it makes them uncomfortable because
you're incepting them.
Yeah. Well, it's because the reality of it is not comfortable, right? Like because it's like knowing that I'm eating like McDonald's or whatever comfortable food that I can have every day is not healthy for me. Once I'm actually presented with this reality, I have to make an uncomfortable change. You have to do something, and it goes back to the old saying: we do not change until the actual point of it becomes so uncomfortable that you either that the point of remaining the same is just as uncomfortable as the change itself.
Yeah. Well, something that because
that's when war happens, people in society. That's when war happens. When we're heading there. So.
But one of the things I've noticed, especially from a biblical perspective, is that you are presented with these lessons. And you're presented with them time and time again until you learn the lesson, oftentimes. But it is possible to refuse to learn or to ignore the lesson till it reaches a point that you either break or have no choice but to learn the lesson.
That's kind of what I said.
Yeah, I know. I'm just rephrasing it.
No, well, thank you. Well, what I said was quoted from people much greater than myself. So.
Yeah, that's my own thing. So
you just repeated what they said in a lot worse ways. I like it. All right. So, in closing,
nope. Last thing I'm going to recommend to help you understand yourself better is go find a place in nature and walk there. No music, no audiobooks or podcasts or anything.
There's someone who talks about this in a recent book.
There's a lot of people who talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
At least just in the sphere of things that I listen to.
Like out of all if you're going to do a hippy dippy thing or whatever, people, one of the good things is to unplug.
Well, it just get out there.
But move when you're doing it, yeah. Be outside.
In nature.
Yeah.
With nothing to distract you.
Well.
And the important part is that you have to let the scary part happen. Which is your own thoughts. You have to listen to yourself.
Well, sometimes there's a nuance that because people they're always with their thoughts, right? So there's people who do things, who try to tune things out all the time, and then people that accept their own thoughts all the time. So I think just a good balance of what you just said is it's going to happen, right? Either way, go out there, be outside, and be in nature. Well, but there are distractions, and then there's a natural monologue.
Be intentional about it, though. Go out there with the intention of not being distracted, other than the animals.
I'm just asking you. You think that helps?
Yeah. Now, mind you, I'm also assuming that you're not in a bad mental place.
Yeah. Does it help? Does it help if we're well, I think it helps. So no matter what, I can be in the worst place. Well, anytime
if you're in a bad mental place, you don't want to be left with your thoughts. Usually.
Well, after I've been after breakups, right? Like there's very few people who are in a great place after you have a good, breakup. You've been in a long-term relationship or whatever, right?
Going for a long walk, no matter where.
Long walk.
helps.
It helps no matter what. Like systematically,
But it's
witchcraft. It actually like helps because the ways that it works within your brain, your blood, in your body, and your lungs. All these
getting your blood
things.
moving, it's forcing you to breathe.
Well, and then like the synapses of what what's his name? Human talks about.
Yeah, but it's one of my favorite parts of hunting and fishing. Now, mind you, caveat: when I'm fishing, a lot of times I will have an audiobook or a podcast that I really, really want to listen to, because fishing is such an automatic process for me that I can actually pay attention. But hunting, I can't have that audible distraction.
I hope not.
Because then I'm gonna overlook something.
Here's how it goes. People, Barry's out there tasting the leaves for the fur, and he's smelling around for Pooh Bear. And what's Bran over there? Bran's over there humming to his new audiobook. Gosh, I love this. That's Lord of the Rings, Bran. You've listened to it 50 times.
Yeah, because it's great. But it is one of my favorite parts of hunting is getting out in nature and being present in nature.
Yeah. And
allowing my thoughts to just happen. Somewhat meditative, but not.
Well, I think I think there's a different. Well, I think it's a nice peaceful moment.
Yeah.
I don't want to get all this up because like there's. I think everyone takes a little bit something. They'll have a different word or explanation for what happens. I just think that. For one, if you're not somebody who's like I don't do the nature thing, you know what? You would think that back in the day you would say Barry will never be a nature type person.
Me too.
Yeah. So like, well, dude, I was a 24-hour gamer, bro, and so like that's pretty bad. Yeah, and it's pretty disgusting. But yes. Even though I still game,
filthy,
not demonizing it, but there's a break from the norm if just that.
Yeah.
Between nature, because nature you can't control, and one of the best and most refreshing things that you can do in your life, especially in a safe environment, is going out into some place that is relatively thick with nature,
right?
And it's because you can't control it, and it's very interesting.
One of the things I've had to learn with hunting is to not stare at the ground, because you're in very uneven terrain, but you have to pay attention. To everything. You have to, especially if you're hunting, because you got to see where your target is. You got to wait for the bird to pop up and watch them and see where they're at and everything.
Birds have
watch
sharp
for
teeth,
rabbits.
Man. Yeah, rabbits with birds. Rabbits with those long horns.
Especially the white ones. They're terrifying. Like my last thing before I get into a point here that's somewhat
you have
relative. Is just gain more knowledge, period. Like, read books. Doesn't matter what it is. Read books.
I think that, so if you don't mind my opinion on that, like, I'm 100% read books, but also it's going to happen organically, isn't it? Like, your interest will lead to knowledge, would you say?
It can, if you allow it to.
I think
like not just read books, but like watch YouTube videos.
Be interested.
Go
out,
experience in the world. Talk to people. Gain knowledge through every aspect that's available.
Don't lock yourself down. If you feel yourself like there's a pressure you'll feel when you're inside too much. Not just, and I'm not saying like just inside, right? Physically, I'm saying metaphorically also. So if you're too walled off, you'll feel the pressure, and then you'll sort of push back, and then you'll find something else which the internet will tell you this is fine. So shame on them for you. Don't listen to that stuff. I'm sorry, kids, but that's a bunch of BS they're selling you, so you can spend more money on their products that might help you or about this. No, go out, experience something simple. Doesn't have to be, but it has to be outside your control, which is just the simplest way of saying it. That's just going out. That's one thing that's funny about there's no more malls and stuff like that anymore. But that was a very simple thing.
Almost depressing.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, like I wasn't a mall rat, but it's a thing that's outside of the youth's control, and very much almost not in nature, not as wholesome and probably mentally healthy, but still in a very emotionally and mentally growing type of format that you can get yourself into, where you're not controlling everything.
Well, not just that, but like a mall specifically. I was a mall rat.
Makes sense.
Here,
yeah.
For whatever that's worth.
I would say it's barely a mall, but
It was a lot better back in those days.
Yeah, I know.
But
well, it's sizes.
I just liked going out and being around the people and all that energy that exists there.
That's the part, like the feedback.
But
right?
also being a goth kid in a small town, like you go to the mall on a Sunday morning and Jesus Christ, what is that? And it makes you feel good.
I hope they maced you a little.
No. But it, like, many times, the old man walked by, Jesus freaking Christ, what the hell? What's wrong with these people? But it was like that. I wanted that reaction.
You did, yes, you did. That's part of your rebellious little Bran saying, "Yeah, man, fight the man, Bran." This is starting to add up.
Just now, even though I've laid it out for you perfectly.
Prior to like the last 5 years.
I don't know. Do we want to get too much into representation? Because that's one of my points that I wanted to make. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but I do want to talk about why representation does matter, and it's not because of. Yes, it's important to see people who you can share some aspects with, because it shows you that you don't have to be a bad person if you see a good person like that on screen. But again, coming back to it, if you are internalized,
well, there's
it's important for kids, especially.
Well, there's an identity.
But if you have an internalized identity too, you can identify with anybody that expresses characteristics that you want to live by yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, like Benjamin Sisko, went back and rewatched Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, and realized how much of an influence the dude had on me.
Yeah, Sisko was awesome.
I'm not black.
Yeah, there's so many, because I think both yes and no, right? So I think that
it's important, but it's not. It shouldn't be as big of a deal as it is.
No, yeah, I think that
regard.
When people will say well, I don't see color, that's like, dude, shut up. I think that there are times people do, and at times it applies, and times it doesn't apply. It completely depends.
I'm gonna have a moment of honesty here, where I've had to profile people, and it started with their skin color, because when you're working at a Radio Shack in an area that's very heavily majority wealthy white people, you see somebody who's doesn't match that profile, your flags go up.
Yes, profiling happens out of natural, organic,
but it
usually environments. But there are things that usually what happens is when it goes bad, is we're already upset. There's an individual who's already upset, and they want a target. They want something to take somebody out on. But yes.
On the converse side of that too, working at the Radio Shack in the mall in Toledo, where you're getting everybody in the area, that kind of profiling doesn't work.
Yeah, because, it was like downtown Portland, man. Yeah, back in the day.
So you have to look for other triggers if somebody's coming in for fraud.
Yeah,
because that's what it was normally for. Was like, are they coming in for fraudulent phones?
Yeah.
And at the one location, if you match this kind of profile, I'm sorry, but you can probably not here.
My experience.
Now, flags go up. The onus is on me now to see if those flags can come down.
Right. Yeah.
And for me to find ways to bring those flags down.
With that sort of crime, I've only experienced, and just my, because it's working in electronics. So you just watch for, it could be anybody who's running interference.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, fraud phones. So they're coming in. They're coming in with, big key, especially at the mall in Toledo, was IDs that said Cherry Street on them, because that was a homeless shelter. Okay. So you'd have dudes from
passing out, whatever.
You'd have people from Detroit come down, and they would make a loop of this area of Ohio, and try to get as many phones as they could. Then they'd go and resell them. But they would also go to the homeless shelter and get people to try to get contract phones.
Just to work with.
Yeah.
Work with, even crash.
So, hey, man, we'll give you $50 if you do this. Yeah. Because they're going to make $800.
Yeah. And you got ghosts there. You got people who, come and go.
But again, my point there was, in one scenario, that kind of profiling doesn't work, because you're seeing every aspect of humanity.
Yeah, there's that's why there's unfortunately people who just want to take the big old paintbrush, make a swathing, line across everything.
I love this analogy, because whenever I think about this broad swath paintbrush, you know what I think of? I think of those really cheap, nasty ones that you get at Walmart
Yes.
that are like $1.
Yeah,
So they start off with a nice, good bunch, right? But it very quickly
the
turns
hairs start
into
falling
these
out.
nasty streaks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's because the brush falls apart.
Well, it's not a very good brush, but I mean, if you want to generalize, that's what you should, how you should picture it. There is a nice large clump of things, and then it very quickly streaks out and becomes a lot of different things.
Yeah, but I like the Cisco thing. That's good.
I'm lost there. But other aspect of representation is, again, referencing Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. One of the things she points out in there is that in the 80s, 70s and 80s and 90s, as the drug wars are really kicking off, most of the people you're seeing on there are black folks. So imagine you're in an area like Barry and I live in now, in that time period where there's not a lot of black population.
Yeah, no, people black.
What's your view of black people going to be if that's all that you're seeing? You're going to think that they're all criminals, right? And druggies and...
I don't know if that holds up. I don't know. Does that hold up?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. And that part of the reason why she talks about that in the book. That's why I like this book, because it makes you think about those things. But think about it from our perspective, right? Conservative, libertarian.
I'm from...
I know, but like...
Washington.
Let me finish. But think of from our perspectives, right? As a libertarian and conservative, or libertarian adjacent, whatever. Mm-hmm. God, I'm turning into one of those people.
Yeah, you are.
Fucking libertarian.
Yeah.
As a libertarian and as a conservative, how are we often portrayed in movies and stuff?
Whatever. Go ahead. What about it?
Or you're more conservative than...
Oh, yeah, I definitely... But when I was, it's like it depends on what type of what environment we're in, right? Like back in the day, I was liberal.
No, like, to my point right now, you identify as...
Well,
with...
the social environment, the political environment, the identity,
But how are conservatives and libertarians often portrayed in movies and TV shows? They're the worst, most evil people, right? So that's part of what brought me around on this idea of representation and why it matters. Is because if you don't actually interact with these people and that's all you're getting...
Well, yeah, there's walls of... there's... I think that... I don't know, like... So... When I grew up in a small, Washington town, and nowadays there's pretty heavy drugs there, I guess. But back in the day, it was like mostly pot, right?
Yeah.
When I moved to Portland, I was going to art school. Two of my roommates, one guy's roommate, the other one was like the kid that was a friend of the roommate, but he was always hanging out with us. Now, me and other guys, we had friends that were black come all the time. We had friends that were from Korea that hang out with us all the time from the apartments. All part of art school, right?
Yeah.
But we're all different walks of life, normal guys. And the two little white dudes got their butts beat because we lived right next to the Pearl District where the apartments were set up as, which is kind of nasty part of the neighborhood, real close to a nastier part where their tracks are. But they got jumped. Now, John, I'm sure, was probably being dumb and mouthing off. But Chris is a little tiny, 5 foot, maybe 9, maybe 150 pounds. And they both got just jacked the hell up.
Yeah.
It wasn't white guys that jacked these guys up.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, it's, and the drugs that were being sold there, like the guys who were buying them, sure, they were white. But they were, so some things hold water.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, the people who were selling drugs, they were white or Mexican or whatever else. The point is, like, I don't think like you can't say like, okay, well that's not true because it's all true.
Well, it is.
It's all true,
and I'm not.
So I don't like that. Like her point. Like I don't know what the point of
it's built these negative stereotypes of black people is the point of it, right?
But there's
across large parts of America, man.
Well, look.
Like, how much do you get outside of this town here?
Well, yeah, nowadays, like, this is, this is kind of where I reside.
But, like, before...
I'm in my 40s. Well, yeah, but I moved...
No, I mean...
I was outside all the time. I was, going to...
like Dick's or Potter, Greeley, Dalton. You ever been to those places?
Not really.
They're towns out here of 200 people.
Right. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
These are the areas that I'm talking about, rural America, where
real.
You're
Those
not.
Real, that's like the sticks, though. That's like Dios.
Still, man. Like, again, the point is your only knowledge of these people is what you're getting off the news. And out of movies where they're being portrayed poorly most of the time.
I think, yeah, okay, this is the nuance.
So,
nuance of this conversation is that also in this time frame, you had the eruption of rap music. Like, there's not just, there's a whole lot. I get what she's saying, but I don't know. I've never, like, back home there's small towns too around my small town.
I understand it might be difficult for you to understand that.
The small town.
Growing up here, like, it was like what?
Are you saying that
2% black population here?
Are you saying that people were dumber?
No, but again, like we talked about earlier before, no, well, I'll avoid going there. What you see.
Well, we don't always accept reality that's put before us, but yes, I can understand that.
But if most people,
well, the way things are portrayed, it's just like the news nowadays.
Yes,
right?
that's the target being thing. Portrayed that way. If you're only seeing that black people are criminals on TV through the news, which is real life, quote unquote, right, it's going to give you this impression. If you don't have that interaction with people, with real people who have that complexion, it can give you a biased view, right, and it often does. I look at, okay, so being from a large city or being in a larger city for a while, right?
Well, yeah.
What do like people in Los Angeles, New York, all these places have as impressions of people like us out here? They think we're freaking.
Well, I remember one of the funniest things I ever had, and I can quote this. There's a gal that her mom was like from Minnesota, and her mom had just passed away, and she's from LA, and she's like, I was helping her with close out her mom's accounts, just gas skimp, right?
Yeah,
because she has power of attorney. And she's like, she was not only reeling from her mom's death, but she was like, I just don't know what to do because everyone's out there is so. How would she put it? I'm trying to remember the exact word she used, but it wasn't conservative. It was so meager and humble of way of life. So she didn't know how to deal with the sales and all these different things, right? It's because she's from LA, so you can imagine the culture shock.
Yeah, well, I'm listening to, and I haven't listened to them in a while. I actually stopped. But Faculty of Horror, they're from Toronto in Canada, right? And like, they've never left there, so it's just like people here who've never left here.
And that does hold true. That does hold water.
Like you
do have you are reinforced as you go if you don't ever branch out to see more, right? If you dig into what you
which
are
is that point, right?
Yeah.
So you're only
exposure to this. But that exposure is so many. I can't imagine.
It has huge
I'm from
impacts,
a small.
man.
So I'm from a small area. Like I did. The town I was born in was a lot more mixed, right, with Laotian and then a bunch of different people coming in from Cambodia and everything, because of all the craziness we know about what happened back then, back in the 70s and 80s, right? So pushed on to the west and the west coast right there. And so that was like, man, I grew up, like some of the first people I ever saw were, Laotian and Cambodia and all that stuff. So,
no, I mean, it's just that representation does matter, because some of the people that I do listen to, you can tell that they've never talked to a libertarian or a conservative outside of like maybe Twitter.
Because like the water like does. Like, I mean, there's a lot of downplay, because like a lot of my I know like a lot, and like I just think it's almost overplayed. I don't know. But we've gone off on a long topic here. Sorry.
One of the podcasts I listened to listed Wario from the Super Mario games as a libertarian.
That's awesome.
To show you how detached from the ideas of libertarianism they are. Yeah. They would call Wario, he's an opportunistic jerk who has nothing in common with even the worst libertarians.
He's more like he's almost what do you call it?
Because
he's a banker.
I mean, I'm not real familiar with the lore, but my impression is he goes and steals stuff.
He steals coins.
Yeah, so like he's opportunistic. Anyways.
Yeah, I know, I'm just being smart. But yeah, no, that doesn't stick to Wario, what they're saying. So
yeah, so just to give you an idea, like
it's
they're ideas of libertarians and what they're getting from other people that they follow.
Well, it's the same thing
have
with
assumptions.
It's the same thing with what's that saying
movies
that's really popular right now? Some actress called Jordan Peterson.
Oh Jesus, don't even. Is that from It'll Be Alright, Darling, or whatever?
Yeah, but
Olivia Wilde.
Yeah, what'd she call him?
I don't know.
But it didn't hold water because I'm down to call anybody anything. Honestly, I'm okay because Jordan Peterson does it to himself, but I agree with 90% of what Jordan Peterson says, right?
It's just
but
people taking snippets of things Jordan Peterson says.
What she used was the most ignorant thing that made her. It was a bad look. And like, I like some of Olivia Wilde's movies, but man, I really don't think much of her opinions now because she apparently doesn't have a damn clue of what a word means.
Jordan Peterson's a very easy target. Even Marvel's gone after him.
I know. Dude, comics. You list me anything that's in movies or comics, I'm gonna hear about it, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like this, I don't know. I think it's not controversial. I think it's an easy point to point to nowadays because you'll find people saying yes, but also to me it doesn't hold much water.
There are ways that it does and ways that it doesn't.
Fair enough.
Right? So that's my point. Like if you're just going, we need this on screen for the reasons we're generally given. Yeah. I don't think that holds as much water because you should be better person than that. Unless you're talking about like real little kids.
Yeah, if you've paid attention.
Like if you're a 20-year-old adult, you should be able to identify with characteristics above. Yeah. And
again, like to the news thing, like if you had noticed for the last 40 years at least that news has been just nothing but entertainment. It's a legit production. Like they have a director. What does that tell you? They have so.
But the last thing I want to say on this representation thing is that like realistically, we need to wipe the slate clean. Like this is my solution for it. We need to wipe the slate clean. And stop doing you did it, so I'm going to do it.
Well, yeah.
Because that's just breeding more resentfulness and creating more divide.
Right. Well, I mean, like that's...
And that isn't to say that we're going to ignore the past and what has happened. We're just saying we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, that ignoring the past would help nobody. And anyone who's ever done that, heck, we need more of the past. We need to pay attention more to the past. Right. So like this has happened before in the past to great civilizations. More intelligent than ours. If you've ever listened, look at the newest thing that they've discovered about Babylonia and their mathematics. So, and look what happens to that society. Like that's civilization. That is a great context. Now.
Oh yeah, because it was one of the most prosperous civilizations in history.
Yes, and brilliant, but they, in every, what's a good word? In every way, they folded on upon themselves.
Yeah.
They were so comfortable. They were so profitable. They were so indulgence.
You got to a point where you didn't have any real problems, so you have to start creating some.
Look around you. And Jocko's had a podcast about this. So I can't remember who it was that asked him, like, what's the biggest problem with America? We have no real problems. Yeah. So we create our own. The way he was saying.
All the wars.
Yeah, there's legit
World War II.
Well, there's legit. Yeah, it's like that. That's just part. I think that's part of the carrot, right? We even have things have been so industrial, but made a business of. They know how manipulation is such a science nowadays that it is so.
It has been for a long time, though. I mean, we're exercising a lot of the same things that the Romans did. Mm-hmm. Anyways. My very last point is that our identities are important, but they have to be cultivated and cultured correctly. Your identity should be something that is individual to you, not attached to something that you have no control over. Sum it all up.
Yeah, get out there and mix it up, because if you don't, you're going to be mixed up yourself.
Yep. All right.
Cool, man. Good talk.
So, thanks for listening. If you made it through, this will probably get broken into 2 episodes.
I think so. I think it was solid. Thanks for carrying it.
We're over 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it was 8:50. I was like, hey, all right, 8:30 is coming up. We're going to be good. No, blew right past that.
So, thanks for listening. All the stuff's down below. You know what to do.
Yeah, like, subscribe. We got the new shirts out there. Don't be afraid to buy those things. We got the...
We don't have any shirts yet. Shit. Okay. I say yet, like...
Well, I was thinking by the time this thing gets going, right? In the what's our drinks called? The Branco Berco drinks.
Oh, this is gonna make a joke, but it's in bad taste.
You're bad jokes. So the Branco drinks, get those. The Berco supplements, get those.
Nope, none of that exists. Anyways, all the links are down below for other ways to listen to me talk about other stuff. Some of it in similar ways. Barry still hasn't given me anything, so
Barry's plotting his revenge.
Have a good night, day, morning, whatever time it is for you, and be better people.
Yeah, keep after people.